To continue this session, I would like to invite Dagnija Lejiņa to be the moderator of the next discussion for next 15 minutes. I also would like to invite Caroline Ramade, the CEO of 15 in Tech and board member of UN Women, to join, and also Louise Gorvil, the director of Techfestival and initiator of the Tech Pledge. And also Doreen will stay on the stage to join the conversation about if technology can, give a push for equal rights.
Do you want to sit?
I will bring you the more microphones.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So yeah. So everyone have a mic? Yeah. So yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Caroline, the founder of 15 Tech. It's a new platform to share and match with women in tech in order to change the tech for real. So in this panel, we will focus on the goal 5 about how to have more gender equity in tech, and also how to build a tech for good. So we have amazing panelists with us today. I will introduce you. So just 1 minute. I was connected and not anymore. Technology is good, but so just for you, Doreen, we had an amazing presentation, but we have to say that you are also personally funded the Equals Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. I want to introduce you, Louise Gorvil. You are the managing director of the Techfestival in Copenhagen, and you will explain a little bit more about what you do. And this is really an amazing festival over there. And last but not least, the founder of the DFF, Dagnija. And you are also really helping women to be empowered and to be on stage with a public speaking agency. So the idea of this panel is to talk about, so can technology give a push to equal rights without to be equal by essence? That means that today, tech is really have a diversity problem, diversity and inclusion problem. We have a monoculture and only white guys, building the tech for the future. And the things are not going in the right way. We have a lot of problem in terms of dark web, all the fake news, and the data really owned by the same people. So I want to really talk about this topic, and perhaps with you, Doreen, we can speak about the situation of the lack of diversity and gender equality in tech. You can talk about that. And then you will give your voice about diversity and inclusion with Louise and Dagnija. So Doreen, you want to introduce the panel and the session?
Sure, thank you. Well, as I mentioned before, there is a big digital gender gap, and regrettably, our evidence shows us that gap is actually growing. And when we look at the gap, it's not just a gap in internet access, there's also a gap in mobile phone ownership. And we see that gap is further complicated when we look at skills and the number of women and girls that are actually engaged in the tech sector. So if we're lucky and we get girls to pursue careers in STEM or in computer science, what we see is that only about maybe 2.5%, I think the research shows, when they graduate, they go on to tech companies, and after 5 years, 0.6 of them are left. And so we try to kind of take the whole problem, the women in tech problem, the leadership problem, which is a huge problem, the skills problem, and the access problem, and you mentioned equals, and that's been our sort of response to bring the global community, bring anyone that cares about this issue to the table, and try to figure out how can we work together, what's working, and then how can we scale that.
Yeah, we can talk about perhaps the figure on the data, just to give an overview. Globally, we have only 10% of female co-founder, and they get a dismal of 2.7% of all the venture capital. And when you are a woman of color, it's like 2% of the venture capital. In Latvia, you have like a kind of situation. You are one in two countries with the most of growth in terms of women in tech. So perhaps, Dagnija, it's kind of interesting because here in Latvia you are like an equal country, and the poor and the women are really a strong place. Perhaps you can talk about that and why there is like this kind of growth. This is here and Portugal, especially in Europe.
Yes, thank you, Carolina. And actually this question, why we are pushing 50% female speakers on the stage of the Digital Freedom Festival, has been very popular, because people told me around, look at the figures, you know, we have 40% female entrepreneurs, we have 20% female who are actually board members right now, and we should be very lucky about this, or grateful, or I don't know what to use. We have 30% female MPs in the parliament. So if you look on the surface, you know, it looks like it might look like very nice picture. Mm-hmm. But when you dig deeper, still in Latvia we face the same problems as everywhere. And in particular, women participation in the tech sector. Even though the figures are good enough there as well, but when you look at the leadership positions, the problem remains. Startup world, the same. The founders, the co-founders figures were low here in Latvia too. So I was wondering how it comes that 100 years ago women got voting rights, and now we are saying that digital revolution is something which is, you know, happening right now, and which we can call revolution, and the changes are tremendous. How it comes that after 100 years, if you think nothing really much has happened, and we are still excluded in this revolution. So my intention is always, instead of blaming others, look in the mirror and to ask myself what I can do to solve the situation. So one of the attentions was, and this, I'm really happy to announce that today we have 50% female speakers on the stage. Apart from that, my background is public relations, so I was thinking that maybe I should, and we can empower women to be on stage by helping them to be better speakers. So these are small steps, but they really can make a huge difference. And this is also the motto of this festival, that it's great that we have United Nations goals, and they really helped us to design the program today. But it's also very important to look into this mirror and to ask yourself, what is that one thing what you can do?
Yeah, and Marie, perhaps you can talk about your festival, because I think it's super interesting to realize human to technology. So, and part of this humanity is 50% of women. So how can we build this future with women? And also, how can we like build this tech with for good perspective? You have like a new initiative, the Tech Pledge. So you can talk about that festival, the Tech Pledge, and the vision you have for the future.
I think that's my favorite topic. So thank you for doing this. But also just wanted to just pick up a bit on what Dagnija said. I sit here as a representative of the welfare country of Denmark, where you would think that equal rights were probably flourishing. But actually, it's on the contrary these years. We're seeing a drop in female founders, we're seeing a drop in female board members. So these years where we're all talking about the global goals and how to further sort of accelerate them, we're actually seeing a very unfortunate development that I think we need to take very seriously. Because we are, of course, losing out on a lot of talent. I spent the last 11 years in the tech industry, and I think it's a big shame that we are not better at spotting and converting talents from all societal groups. I think we're losing out on great perspectives and innovation. So that's why we, of course, should take this very seriously. One of the ways that we've done so in Copenhagen with the knowledge institution that I run is to really address sort of the monoculture, I called it earlier in our prep session. And what we mean with this is that when you look at the early web industry, the early web companies back in the 90s and early zeros, what you see is really sort of a culture that was pretty much run by a very homogenous group, Silicon Valley based, that was sort of saw themselves in opposition to the systems, saw themselves in opposition to government and sort of ruling elitist groups. And a lot of the tech companies, a lot of the tech culture and mindset that is still today driving the industry sort of stems and had roots back to this particular culture, this sort of rebel revolution that tech was grown out of. And I think that is not terribly compelling to a lot of groups, including women and other societal groups, people of color, people of different educational background. And so I think that a lot of the issues in my opinion, would stem back to the culture that still sort of hadn't matured as the industry has matured over the last couple of decades. So I think that's a really interesting thing to address when we want to appeal to a broader group of talents in tech. That's one point. And as you mentioned, we at the festival that we run in Copenhagen have been driving different initiatives. I think we can maybe jump back into that a little bit later. But I think this is really something that is important for us to address, the mindset, the culture that in tech never really grew up in a way. So I think that would be my first contribution.
Yeah, so in fact, just to stay on this topic, 1 in 2 women leave tech permanently after their first job today due to discrimination and sexism. So we are talking about education, and I will give you the word about that because you have solution and you try to do something with equal. But the problem is that the retention and the promotion of the talents and the job is not be done. So because we have this monoculture, we are losing women every day. So you say that even in Denmark, we have like less female co-founder. 90% of the investors today are male. So that's a problem because we are investing in people really who looks like you, and we need to change that really urgently because if not, we will not push equal rights and equal solution. We will not fix and will not create the future we really want to see for not only for women, for the world. So I want to talk about the solution in terms of education. Doreen, you had a program, you ran a program for the girl and to bring them in ICT. How it works and what is the impact of this program?
So on the 4th Thursday of the 4th month, so the 4th Thursday in April, since 2010, we've been running something that we call Girls in ICT Day. And we invite all countries in the world to do national celebrations. We invite the private sector to do celebrations. And it's about doing events that can expose young girls to opportunities in the tech field. And since we started in 2010, we've had 170 countries do events, and we've had hundreds of thousands of girls be exposed. What's a little bit challenging is to measure how many of them actually pursue studies in that field and then, of course, end up in the tech sector. And so through the program that you mentioned before, through Equals, we're trying to make sure that we can follow that pipeline and look at women in the workforce and, of course, women in leadership positions. And you mentioned, of course, retention and promotion. And I wanted to mention something that the UN, I think, has done well, and led by UN Women. We have this system-wide action plan where we look at the numbers. And so each year we have to report on the number of applicants, the number of shortlisted, the number of hired, and we're looking at how many people are staying and who's being promoted. And I think that's important for everyone in that we have to pay attention to the numbers. We need to understand the baseline, because when we expose what the baseline is, people get horrified. And then once we know where we are, we can actually try to move those numbers. We've been experimenting with something in our meetings where we are using machine learning to measure how often women are intervening in our meetings. Because we believe if we can start to show interesting numbers, then people will start to realize that they need to bring more women on their delegations, and they need to empower those women to take the microphone and actually speak. And that goes back to what you were saying, what can each of us do? I think we can all encourage women to come forward. We can try to mentor them and coach them as well.
Want to jump on this topic, perhaps?
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I think that this common understanding about the education in STEM, I think it's obvious, and we see so many initiatives all around the world. But then the question, what happens once girls finish education, and what happens in the workplace? And we just had a conversation with some of my colleagues during the lunch break, and they said that baby, you know, this moment, because actually the workplace is not prepared for that. You know, this monoculture actually was the one we are talking about, industrial revolution, how it changed the way we work. Now we challenge 8 hours work week because it doesn't work anymore, because, you know, computers can do so much things instead of us, etc., etc. So maybe it's also time to discuss how we can create new standards of working culture which are more suitable for women when they have children, for example, and how we accept that and how we develop. Actually, we need transformation of the whole system. It's not just so simple as it might sound, but there's no way other way around. The other issue which I find interesting is also it's also about positive discrimination, and I also would like to hear your opinions about that, because it's also some discussions we don't have a common, let's say, there are different views around that. I personally believe that positive discrimination is good if it serves as a shortcut, you know, to make things happen faster. So, and I think also when we talk about women inclusion, but not only women, I think, and the very important keyword here is diversity. Mm-hmm. Very important keyword is diversity as a value that brings to the wherever business, government, society in general. And I think at the moment we are talking maybe about women, but especially in Europe we see the society is becoming older and older. So I think other dimensions we will have to include more and more and recognize in this debate about inclusiveness.
I can just give an example. Before to build this new platform, 15 Tech, I was running an incubator, a gender lens incubator. So we had like at least a female co-founder, so with 20% of the capital. So, and by the end of the incubation program, we had the most diverse ecosystem. The name is Willa, and I was the managing director during 3 years. And at the end, we have like 50% of male and really diverse team. It was like an amazing living lab to prove that when you put like a little quota, it was not, we can come with 4 male co-founder, what you want. It's like, at the end, we have like the perfect ecosystem. So I think about the new leadership we need to build together, and it comes from male and female and all the people and all the communities and the origin. And I really believe that we can change tech with commitment, and the commitment of the people who are already here. So that means the CEOs of the companies need to really ban the toxic culture, to let place to diverse team, because with diverse team you have like more than 19% of innovation, because your world is free. You have no mansplaining and everything in the room. You can give the world to new ideas, and that's amazing because it's good for your business. It's good for the opportunity. If you are not hearing the voice of diverse people, you are building perhaps company for you and for the guys who will finance you, but not for the good of the society. So perhaps, Marie, we can talk about the commitment. And what you did with the tech pledge, it's all about what we can, like, how can we engage the tech and move forward for real by the people through the new energy and a new way of building the tech today to be really to be like really related to the societal use and needs today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge question, but I'll definitely try to tackle it. So again, one of the things that we find really interesting to sort of dive into when it comes to the broader role that the tech industry plays in society. Again, one of the things that we're seeing is really a tech industry that's sort of grew up in the garage, as the famous HP example goes. But the energy that once sort of fueled the early web companies, that has changed dramatically over the last few decades. So what we have been working on in Copenhagen is a way to sort of address the new responsibilities that the tech industry is facing these years. From the situation where with companies being in garages, we're now seeing today that 8 out of 10 of the biggest companies on the planet are tech companies. There are billions of people logging into their Facebook accounts every day. So tech is a huge power player in society today, but again, we are seeing a culture and a mindset that perhaps haven't really matured into understanding its new role in society, and that's some of the work that we'd like to address. And we kind of knew we were not going to fix it all on our own, so earlier this year we invited 150 leading technologists to Copenhagen. We locked them up in a room, a little less dramatic than what it sounds. And we asked them to really define a pledge, very much inspired by how the medical industry has a medical oath. You might have it here in this country as well, but sort of an oath that you take when you leave medical school. And we were inspired to sort of apply that to the tech industry as well. So what we did in 48 hours in Copenhagen was to come up with the Tech Pledge. It is a very simple pledge of 12 commitments that sort of make you think about how to better think of diversity, how to better think about designing with the global goals in mind, how to think about letting in feedback from your users, how to think about creating security and transparency and all these new agendas that the tech industry is tackling these years. And I can, of course, encourage you to go and look it up and take the pledge if you feel like it. We have a website called techpledge.org where you can take the full pledge. And for us, it's been a really interesting way of working within the tech startup world to really sort of address some of these issues that we are facing these years. And if I may also add, today we are doing a collaboration with our good friends here at DFF to be able to release the Tech Pledge in Latvian next week, so you can actually take the pledge in your local language as well. This is part of a global rollout that we're doing this fall and winter of taking the Tech Pledge to a lot of different countries. So thank you for helping us bringing the Tech Pledge to Latvia.
Thank you. So follow our social media accounts next week, and you are everybody invited to sign up, subscribe, and just to announce your support for these principles.
I just want to finish with you with how do you see the future of tech now, as a woman, but as a actor of the tech industry? I want to have a vision of what we can do, what we can build, really to change the tech now for the good. So it's all about human, all about technology, and all about, you'd say, about the connection. But I want to have really your point of view of the next years about this topic.
So I would say we need to be people-centered, and that's what I tried to share in my remarks before. And I just want to underscore the importance of diversity. I think we're at a critical moment where if we continue as business as usual, we're going to be in bad shape in a couple of years. As we think about AI and machine learning and those engaged, it's a little bit unsettling that those that are doing the training data, there's a huge bias there, right? In the United States, right?
Apple Card, yeah. Just last week. It was
right, I think it's less than 10% women working in this space, and we're talking about the future, we're talking about machine learning, and if we don't have a diversity of players at the table, what is the future going to look like for us? It's very concerning. So we need to get engaged now, and I think the Tech Pledge is a great initiative. I think everyone can do something to try to make the tech world more inclusive and more meaningful to people.
Solve the diversity problem in 10 seconds? Is that what you're asking me?
or I think you have like a
Yeah, no, I think this is the great opportunity, really, to sort of challenge, inspire the next generation to really think hard about the mandate that they have, because they do have a different mandate that the previous generation of web entrepreneurs did, in the sense that they simply have access to so many people and so many lives and so many communities at this point. And I really hope that we are better at sort of challenging them to think about, well, how are we gonna steward this responsibility? How are we going to drive impact, and what impact are we going to drive? Because there is a great opportunity here to really take a stand and lead on so many interesting agendas. Yeah, I think that would be my great hope.
And we talk about the place of Europe in this new situation.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's an interesting conversation. I guess I can just talk from a personal standpoint. I belong to a generation of European entrepreneurs that were sort of brought up believing that the only way of driving business and doing startup was the Silicon Valley playbook, right? I even moved to Silicon Valley. That explains my slightly American accent, I guess. Because that was the way we built startups. That was the way we built companies. And I think with the new sort of interesting dilemmas, the new sort of interesting challenges that we're seeing for startups right now, which are diversity, which are transparency, which are securing our data and freeing up our data and sharing our data and having innovation happening on the data. I do think that we have a lot of interesting things to contribute with in Europe. We have different histories of collaboration. We have different histories of building societies. And I really do think that we should perhaps not only look over to the other side of the pond over there, but really start digging into our own history, our own culture and heritage, and look into new kinds of collaboration and new kinds of stewardship and government around the technologies. I could go on forever. I'm going to stop now. But I really think we do have some interesting perspectives, and we should sort of be proud of that and look into how we can drive European innovation in new ways.
Do you want to have the final word?
Yes, I think that I think it's interesting with tech, and because of the speed and the scales that, and we see and we hear so many great positive examples. Because tech can amplify the positive aspect of the humans, right? Values and positive impact, etc., etc. But the way it works on this light side, it also could work the opposite. And sometimes I'm thinking that the humans are not so. The human side of the dark side of humans are very. It might be very dark, and because of the tech, it could be very, very, very. The scale and the speed, can work in a very dramatic way. So, so this makes me think of the future in a not so positive manner. But on the other hand, I think that this is kind of human values test. And what I see right now, and actually I'm very optimistic about the future because of the new generation. I think because of at least in our part of the world, we see there's so many positive trends like purpose-driven companies and young people who question more and more why they're doing this and sustainability, etc., etc., etc. These are not only buzzwords. Just one example, when even I talk to the companies here in Latvia, when they are sharing their practices of hiring best talents, they say this question about what your company is doing to make the world a better place is becoming more and more popular one. Mm. So I think this gives me hope.
Great.
Yeah. I will just finish with this example of Apple Car. I think it's kind of illustrating the situation. You may heard about the scandal last week of this couple, really a famous entrepreneur and his wife, who asked for an Apple Card, and they have the woman was having even more money than the husband, and they asked for the credit, and he got 25 more, 20, really an access to credit, it was really, really, really higher. So they publish the situation and they ask to Apple, what happened? Why? And nobody really can answer because they say, it's not our fault, it's the algorithm's fault. And the algorithm was just biased, totally biased. And nobody had the opportunity to make an intervention. So it's all about how to build this algorithm for tomorrow. That's why we need to have more diverse people and more women involved. But also we can't just let the access to the money, to everything, to an algorithm. We need to have like a human access. We need to have like a humanity working with the tech to build this product of the future. And I think it was like really a great example of really the things we need to stop now, and why we need to be involved as a woman for sure, but why we need to really say to the tech people, just change now. We can change together for the good of humanity and for the good of the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.